Hello, everybody. Welcome to the listening table with me, Heather Younger. Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you. It's been a while, and I wanted to just kind of let you know why we're here, what's going on. I had the Caring Leadership Community calls, and really decided that I wanted to branch out more, and instead of having more of the closed off community, really put this out here on LinkedIn and let more of you join in when you could around your work schedules. I love this because it's recorded, and so people can join in. You can join in the comments. You can say hello. So please do, if you're out there, if you're joining live, put in the comments that you're there and tell me where you're from. And so the focus of this listening table will be having conversations that are somehow connected to listening at work, mostly to different types of audiences at work, salespeople, customer experience, so customers, coworkers, team members. There'll be elements of leadership that we'll talk about, and also this idea of hi Lisa, woot woot, hey there. Um, just this idea of how do we listen more effectively, and when do we fall down, and what does it feel like when people listen to us, and just how can we be better listeners overarchingly. And I'm doing this also because, well, this is the work I do at the Employee Fanatics and my consulting firm, and this is what I do as a speaker. I talk about listening and culture and things, right? But I have a new book that'll be coming out. Barrett Kohler agreed to let me do my next book, and that's going to be coming out April of next year, and it's going to be on active listening. It's called The Art of Active Listening. So I'm super excited about that today. So what'll happen too, from a format perspective, sometimes it'll be a solo show with me, either in some news and a tip or a little training. There'll be times when there'll be a panel where we'll be discussing a topic that's relevant, that has an angle of listening to it. And then there'll be maybe me interviewing someone, kind of like I do on my podcast, Leadership with Heart. So that's what we'll be focusing on. And what'll happen is this is going to happen every 2 weeks. I will make sure we publish who's going to be on and kind of what the lineup is, looking for like the next 2 months, so that everybody can know exactly what to expect. We won't go more than about 45 minutes. Sometimes it could be shorter, particularly if it's a solo show. But at least you'll know when to tune in. It'll always be here as an event on LinkedIn, so you can go ahead and it's also on Facebook too, and it'll be stored on YouTube. But that way you can put on your calendar. You can start to get used to joining. But please make sure that you always go in the comments, ask questions of me, ask questions of my guests. So here we go. The guest for today is Dirk Frese. And Dirk, hello there,
Hi.
Dirk. Dirk is somebody, gosh, I've known him for a while now, and he has been
I
on my
think 4 years.
podcast 4 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Been on my podcast. He's been in my book. He was a member of the Caring Leadership Community Call. Actually, he was a member of the HR Community Call. So he has been on this journey with me to kind of figure out what messages resonate the most. Which things do we need to be talking about in the world? How can we help other leaders or help other people, other humans show up better? And so today, Dirk has agreed to do, he did a much longer, amazing version for us a year or so ago in our HR community calls on curiosity. And I just thought I'd love for him to be the first guest as we think about the listening table and what's required to listen well and listen deeply is this idea of curiosity. So Dirk, welcome. I'm excited to talk to you today about curiosity some more.
Hi, Heather, and everybody out there. Yeah, it's a huge pleasure for me and an honor to be on your first listening table LinkedIn Live event. Thank you so much. And as you said, we know each other for a while, and I made a presentation about curiosity because I also introduced that to our company that I'm working for. So I'm here just to introduce myself briefly. At JULABO USA, we are doing liquid temperature control, mainly for pharmaceutical industry and other industries like aviation, aerospace, and numerous other ones. And as you also pointed out in the brief bio, I'm also the executive chair of Wisdom, which is a nonprofit organization called Women in Science Demonstrating Outstanding Merits. So we want to help young women in their career from academia into industry. Yeah, we know each other from the community, and we were talking about this topic, curiosity, and I really think, as curious as I am, this is a great topic, honestly, specifically as it has so much impact on our listening skills, I think, doesn't it? And
Absolutely.
and so instead of giving a long presentation, as you already have said, I just want to go over some highlights about curiosity right now before we then hop into a discussion.
That's awesome.
Um, I would like to start with a quote from Albert Einstein, somebody that I really admire and adore. And he said, "I have no special talents. I'm only passionately curious." And I think that is so true for successful people to be curious, and specifically for him as a scientist. I'm a scientist myself, so I'm a biochemist by education. I didn't mention that in the very beginning. So I want to talk a little bit about what is curiosity? Where is it even coming from? How did the perception of curiosity change over time? Um, it was really mentioned very early on by William Shakespeare already in the 16th century with the term curiosity killed the cat. Everybody, I think, knows that. What does that mean? Is curiosity killing the cat? He was more referring to the part of caring on sorrow, because care is also part of curiosity, of the word's root. And it also already gives a hint towards that curiosity really can kill, because there are risks associated with that as well. So where does this really come from? And in the past, in the time when William Shakespeare was alive, curiosity was really not well taken. It was frowned upon. People didn't want others to be curious. The people in power did not want others to question too many things, whether it was church or government. They wanted not that everybody is really too curious or nosy. And something that I found interesting is also, as I'm German, as you might hear, in German, the word curiosity is called Neugierde. And this is put into two different parts of the word. Neu means new, and Gierde means greed. So who wants to be greedy? But in fact, when you are curious, you are greedy for news. You are greedy for finding something out, like every scientist should be. But that was the reason why this had such a bad reputation, the term curiosity at the time. And things changed then in the times of the Enlightenment. And when we know about the French Revolution and everything that came after that, when people became empowered, the people compared to the reigning powers, and curiosity was then becoming, I would say, the cornerstone of modern research and science. Beforehand, that didn't even flourish. So without the change in the perception of curious being negative, now being more positive, now then science could flourish, something that we really love to see and need, as everybody knows, specifically in these times right now. So that, I think, is very interesting, just to think a little bit about how curiosity really evolved. And then thinking about biology, it's not only us humans who are curious, it's also in animals. And some of you are pet lovers, and you might see that. And I know, Heather, you have a little dog, and I can imagine that this one is also going into corners, sniffing for food, and what are the options and what might be the risks if you find that out. I know our dog, at least, is always finding food, and also in ways which are really not appropriate sometimes. So it knows that there's a risk associated to that. And animals use curiosity really to explore their surroundings. So some of the most curious animals we know are the crows or the ravens in the bird family. They're very highly developed brains, so that gives you a hint already that curiosity comes along with a certain development of our neuron structure. And in the other kingdom of animals, the rats are very, very curious. So both, as you see them in the urban environment as well, can adapt very, very quickly. So therefore you see so many rats and ravens and crows in our cities, which other animals cannot really populate, because they are missing this part of development of their brains, which allows them to be curious. And being curious and being able to find foodstuff also is helpful then in mitigating risk, because they can then really decide on, with their curiosity, what the information that they gather, is there a risk in going into that mousetrap, for example, yes or no, and avoid it. So this is a very essential need for us to be curious and to find that out. Why do animals do that? Why do we do that? There's clearly a biological drive, and there's a lot of science going on and research right now to find out more about curiosity and to understand that. And by chance, I have a little model here of our brain. I have to
Right there. Yep.
adapt to the camera. And what happens, and I'm sure most of you have seen that already, how our brain is made up. But you have first here the prefrontal cortex. That's where all our cognitive functions happen. So in fact, the thinking, to be very, very simple right now. And then you have here the thalamus, hippocampus, these areas of the limbic system. And they are connected to each other. So when we are curious, we have a high activity in the prefrontal cortex, and there's a connection to the limbic system, which really allows then, when we are in a state of curiosity, to really release dopamine. And I think most of you have heard about dopamine. Dopamine is part of our reward system. It makes us excited, it makes us satisfied, and that's like it's a drug. In fact, it's a chemical drug, like other drugs are as well. So you can really get addicted to that, of course, as well. So curiosity can be, in a negative sense, become addictive. And I think we all know that. I can imagine that a lot of people in our audience know the situation that you are researching something on Google or elsewhere, and then you cannot stop. You go from this page to the next page, and then 10 further pages, and night falls, and you're still in bed looking onto Google, finding new things, because it can become addictive to really have this dopamine secretion, which makes you so excited to find out things more. And then people say you're going down a rabbit hole. That's what usually people say. The risk with that is that you lose focus, perhaps. So be careful when you are too curious. Prioritize the things that are really important, and don't become too addicted to your curiosity. But
Oh, I
I'm
love
still
that.
a very positive person. I love to be curious, and that's the reason why I choose science as the topic that I studied, honestly.
Well, when I think about this, Dirk, well, as I, people are probably like, well, you're talking so much about curiosity in your brain. Like, why are you talking about this on the listening table or about like anything related to listening? Well, I mean, curiosity is the foundation of listening. Like, if you aren't curious about what's happening with another human, if you aren't curious about what they need from you or what they're going through, you have to have that basic level of curiosity to even decide to lean in, to even decide to kind of investigate what might be going on in your workplace, for example, in your team, with a colleague, with your customers, right? With your
Absolutely.
prospects. Curiosity is like the foundation of all of it.
Absolutely. And what also recent research has found out, before we come to this perhaps, is also that learning becomes much easier. So when you want to learn something, and the teacher or university professor can get you into this state of curiosity, they found out that you can memorize things much better and much longer than if not. So that is really this story that we all know. We all had a good teacher or a bad teacher in our history, I'm sure. And what was the difference between the two? You really remember a lot more of the things, of the subjects that you learned from the good teacher. And the good teacher, in fact, was the one who really made you curious. And by the way, we are most curious at the age of 4. That's the reason why things are a little bit risky. So for the parents here on the call, be aware of that your kids are most curious at this age. But you said perfectly fine. When you are curious, you are also curious about your customers, or should be curious about your colleagues, curious about the people that you are recruiting. And this is then the key for listening effectively, I would say. Listen actively, but also effectively. What do you really need to know? And how do we listen? I think that's an interesting topic to discuss based on curiosity then.
And what I like about this idea, what I like about curiosity, like the bedrock or the foundation of this idea is that curiosity requires almost like requires you being a blank slate as you go into a situation, right? It requires that you remove, I talk
Yes.
about removing your filter, removing your predisposed concepts, and you're saying, I'm emptying myself out to go like more fully into whatever this thing is that I'm engaging with, a person. As we're talking about listening, it's how do I then, if I'm curious and I remove all that stuff and I'm going into it with a sense of learning, investigation. Now it's not just my filter. Now it's not just my background and my history and my dialogue in my head, which often happens when we listen, right? We have this own dialogue and we're trying to like solve for a thing we're trying to get to the bottom of. With curiosity, it allows us to kind of empty that out, right? And go into
It's a
it
very
for their
great way
benefit.
of looking. I like that a lot, Heather. That's a very great way of looking at it, because we all have assumptions when we go into an interview situation of some sort, in an HR situation or whatever. And being curious allows you to level the playing field again. I would definitely agree with what you just have said. Absolutely.
So what are some ways that you recommend people grow in curiosity? I know you have some great ideas on that.
To grow in curiosity, really try to think back of your childhood, and don't try to be um, too guarded, not to allow your curiosity to shine through. That is what I would say, because sometimes people put up a guard and think you have to be this or that way. For example, when you are hiring a person, be open, be authentic, and be curious about the person behind the CV that is presented on your desk. I think that is so key. Just allow yourself to be curious, because that also shows appreciation for the person on the other side of the desk. So that is a beneficial situation for both, not only for the one who's interviewing, because we shouldn't mistake curiosity for interrogating. Be always respectful, I think, but ask questions that are really of interest for you, and listen carefully. And listening for me means not only with the ears, but also with the eyes. Really look for all the nonverbal cues as well that come across. And
Mm.
listen with your heart, I think, is also key here, like Antoine de Saint-Exupéry said in The Little Prince. I think that's also a very important motive for listening skills.
When did you first become like interested? I mean, I know you're a scientist, so I'd love to hear just a little bit of how you became interested in curiosity and why you like to talk about it so much.
Um, I became interested being a scientist. I asked myself why I am so curious, honestly. Since I'm a child, I did a lot of research also at home already. And then I asked myself, why is that, first of all? But it really got a boost last year when we in the company here at JULABO USA were looking again for a theme for the next year for our sales team. And we thought stay curious is a very important topic. And then I did a lot more research on that, and created presentations and other things that I never before have analyzed at such a deep level.
Hmm. I can just I don't I kind of see my sense of curiosity. I always like to, I'm always a person who likes to get right at the like crux of things. Like what is the root for it? And, my backstory of being a child, interracial, interfaith marriage, and feeling like my voice just wasn't really called upon much, that like the world was happening to me. They were doing things kind of to me. They were excluding me. Right. And no one asked me my opinion for certain things. And so this like desire to like have others have a voice, and for them to feel like they were important to me, at least to one human on this planet, to another human, right? Then every time I would enter into the interaction, I was leaning in. And so when I say seek to understand, it really does boil that, which is why I wanted you to be the first guest on, is it's this level of going, instead of me like thinking I know what it is that's happening to you, or thinking I know or understand what's happening. So this assumption idea, I feel like
Hmm.
curiosity is like the antidote to assumptions. So we go in and it's like, yeah, I don't know. I want
Yes.
to know. So I have a
Yes.
deep desire to know, to learn, to seek, I have a desire for that, but I don't know for sure. That's why I'm coming to you. That's why I'm asking you questions, so I can get to the bottom of what you need. So it's again, removing what it is I'm expecting or assuming in the interaction.
And what you just said is very valid, because when you were talking about you want to go to the root of things, so that's like the root cause analysis in quality management as well. Also there, when you have a process which is out of line or out of order, sometimes you make assumptions what the real cause might be, but based on our assumptions, we pick out the wrong root cause. So again, also there, be curious in all possible directions, involve all the people that you can who are somehow aligned to the process, and then you will find the root cause. Same thing like in the conversation which you just mentioned. It really is, I think, omnipotent. You could use curiosity everywhere, obviously. The more we talk about it, the more it becomes clear to me as well.
Have you ever been in a position where you've seen people become like super addicted to curiosity, or have you gone down the rabbit hole? And can you think of
I did
a
that as
scenario?
well. I'm one of the people who are laying in bed and looking on their iPhone for the next question to be solved. And yeah, I'm addicted to that, I admit. But I also know a lot of other people who are going down the rabbit hole, literally, yes.
Oh, I love that, Lisa. Lisa says, integrating inner child, like when she's
Yeah,
talking about integrating the inner child in you, allowing yourself to be
yes,
like a child. I think that's so critical with all this. But what happens otherwise is, as adults, we really just let ourselves get in the way of this whole listening thing, don't we? We just we have to be the one that has the answer when we're adults. And when we're kids, we're like, we want to get the answer, but we know we don't have it. And so as adults, if we can get to the point where we enter into the exchange with, I know nothing, I know I don't know this,
yes,
it's
that's
a
the best.
whole nother way to
Yes,
listen, isn't it?
absolutely. That's extremely powerful. Absolutely, yes.
I'm like
And,
trying to,
and
as I
then
talk.
filtering. And
y-
filtering is also another thing which is very important in listening, I think, as well, because we get so much information all the time, and also being curious adds on top of this. But now it's the main task of our brain really to filter out what is really important and what is not. That is sometimes exhausting and tiring and stressful for people as well. And that then manifests itself in some issues.
Yeah, and I call that in the cycle of listening that I put together, I call that decoding, or reflecting or filtering. It's the exact same thing,
Yes.
but it's like after you've heard all this stuff from somebody, it doesn't matter where you've heard it. Your brain, you're like, it's swirling, like all these things are connecting and firing, and you're like, ah, and it's exhausting. It's actually incumbent upon you. It's more responsible for you to handle the feedback in a way that says, let me take time to process, to decode, to reflect, all of this stuff. Let's just take this time to do it, because then when I come back to the person who provided all the input, whatever that input was, now I come back in a way that's not like emotional and exhausted, but more energized because I've done some work, I've taken that time, and now they go, wow, like wow, they actually were hearing me because they did kind of what Lisa said, which is kind of this integration thing. We were integrating what we heard,
Yes.
then digesting it, and then going through to kind of synthesize and figure out what are we going to do about what we just learned. It could be anywhere, right? If you think about, there's so much listening, there's so many pieces of data,
Yes.
so many parts of
And on
input
social
that we're
media and
receiving.
everything, you're overwhelmed with information. And therefore, what you said, take a pause. It's very interesting. I just recently came across, which I wasn't aware of, that in the word listen also is the word silent. I didn't realize that, because if you just, like in Wordle, play around with the letters. So that's important. Be silent from
Mm.
time to time when you really want to listen, and don't talk over the other person, which I just did, by the way. Excuse me.
No, that's okay. We all do it. I always tell people, like, I talk about carrying leadership, I talk about listening, and I can tell you, if I ever did that 100% of the time, I'd probably be like a billionaire right now. I don't do it 100% of the time, and I like right here. Let's see. Kavita says, it's like being at the second stage of learning curve. I know that I don't know, and now
Yeah,
I'm curious to dig deep and to explore and to learn. Isn't that powerful, right? I
it
mean,
is.
it's kind of like bing, like the light bulb, as Gru would say, right? Light bulb. And when you have that light bulb that comes out where it's like, I have no clue what to do here. Like, I think that happened a lot during George Floyd. So everything was happening to George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, like all these things that were happening on that kind of racial justice front, and people were like, I have no clue what to do here. Like, what is happening with my people? And like, I don't know how I feel about it. And they're just going into it just like, so there was a sense of helplessness. There was
Hmm.
also a little hopelessness, but that helplessness, I think, if we do it, what you're alluding to, Dirk, if we want to kind of switch it to the dopamine boost we want to get, we switch that helplessness to a sense of curiosity. Now, okay, I don't know what to do with all of this stuff that I'm faced with. I'm very, it's exhausting. I feel stupid. I feel like a victim. I feel like I victimize people, like all these things that are going around in that moment. Right. But if you say, okay, because I know I don't know this, because I know I don't know the solution, I'm going to go seek it out. So now I'm going around with curiosity, and I think
You
about people coming to me. People came to me like, gosh, the weeks and months to follow, obviously wanting an answer from someone who looks like me. And I can't give the answer to everybody who looks like me. So that's the one thing to say right here, right? Go seek out and lean in and dig deep with other people, lots of different people to get different perspectives, right?
That's
But
important.
go with curiosity, go with this idea,
Yes.
like, Kavita says, it's the
And what
learning
you
curve.
just said was wow. I can only say that was a wow moment for me, because you just said everybody is helpless in certain situations. And then there are situations that we don't even know how to react to. You just mentioned the racism thing. There is, of course, the coronavirus crisis. There is the Ukraine war. Then you have the Oscar nights. There are a lot of things that people don't know in the first instance how to react. And then you can become helpless. You can become also sad or depressed. And when you are curious, as you just said, and you are excreting dopamine because you research into it, you want to make your own picture about the situation, to come up with your own opinion. That is exciting for you, and that helps you out of that slightly depressing phase. And I recall when we were talking about curiosity in this other leadership community, there was one participant who said it helped her throughout a depression, more or less, at the workplace, just thinking about this curiosity theme and really applying that. So what you just said is extremely powerful for healing as well, which I didn't even think about before I joined you today in the call. It just came to my mind when you just said this.
Well, and I didn't think about it until we had this conversation, which is why this is a listening table, because I'm listening to you and I'm listening to the people who are putting things in the comments, and you're listening to me, and that's where we grow, right? I think that's the key, right? And when we think about, like, again, I wish I could say I knew everything, which is why I figured for this next book, I want to be listening to a lot of people. I want to talk about these discussions, go deeper into it, because there are going to be angles that I haven't thought about. Right? They're going to be angles, right, Lisa, that we haven't thought about. And we don't think about it until all of a sudden I'm challenged in the comments, or I my view, the people that are with me on a panel, or I'm talking to Dirk here, where it's like, oh, and I learn by speaking out loud. So some people, like, they learn, I have to be fully, I do have to take filter time. I do have to take decoding time. That's also part of the learning process. But this idea of, like, talking out loud helps me hear you, right? It helps me hear you. And if I think out loud, then you think out loud. Now the two of us together
Yes.
create a microcosm, create just an amazing thing that turns into innovation and all these things. And so I think that's where this curiosity comes from. If we're all curious, if we're like leaning in to curiosity more often than not, we're able to really truly hear each other.
And that's building then trust, I would say. So that's important then at the workplace again. When you have this interaction like we do right now, the two of us, and being curious, both of us, and then interjecting and having different angles of views, that builds trust, and that builds peace of mind for the people and a safe workplace. So this has a huge impact on us in business.
Oh, yes.
100%
And
would say.
it's so true. And I love what Philip says. I love letting my curiosity lead me to connection,
Mhm.
whether in my learning or understanding others that don't look like me. I love that. I love letting my curiosity lead me
Need.
to connection.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Thanks, Philip. That was that's pretty
Yeah.
powerful.
Great quotes, really.
it,
Yeah.
it really is. So I mean, I think the key here is, as we open ourselves up, if we as we open ourselves up, we are, like, I always tell people, when I think of the phases of listening, and then we think of active listening, there's, like, we're at the place where we're a receptacle. We are receiving. We are receiving.
Yes.
So we're listening, we're receiving. And then there's when true real listening and active listening take place. It's when we are now like we're playing a tennis match, so that
Yes.
I am listening, I am a receptacle, but now I'm throwing the ball back to you so that you can talk, and we're going back and forth, and I'm open. So we're both open, and we're both open, and we're both expressing ideas.
Yes.
True listening starts to take place, because now I can lean in. And as Philip says here, I love this. My 3 magic words in being curious is tell me more.
Yes.
Ooh, I love it. I think that's great, right? That's a great way to think. Um, and I always tell people that, like, when I'm, even like if I'm speaking in an audience, I'll be speaking and then I can't stand when I'm speaking. Like, I don't want to speak the entire time of myself. So I always want to get other people involved, and they'll say something like, because I like it. And I'm like, okay, you got to give me more than that. I don't know. What do you mean? Because you like it. Tell me what that means. And so it's
Yeah.
always like, tell me. I am the seeking, to leaning in, the tell me more philosophy. I think is brilliant. What other tips do you have, Dirk? What other kind of ideas do you have around curiosity that maybe you shared before, but that this group or the people that will hear this, this is recorded, so you can share it far and wide, that maybe they haven't thought of? I love the brain science behind curiosity. I love the history that you gave up front. So for those who weren't here in the beginning, you could hear that because that was super interesting. What other things, besides going back to being like a child, which I think is the foundation of what we need to do in all of this?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think staying curious, I think this is really a mantra that one should remind oneself of when one goes into meetings, for example, at the workplace, that you think are boring because you had them 10 times in a row and you think they don't go anywhere. But if you stay curious and think about that going into this meeting, then it can become vivid, lively, and you learn from that, and it really drives the company forward. And that holds true in our private life as well. I think when we were thinking about issues with listening at home, I think everybody knows and has heard probably, oh, you didn't listen to me, from the spouse. Doesn't it happen? It happens to
Obvious.
me, at least. I'm not perfect. But the reason is because you think already ahead. You think, I know already what my partner is going to tell me right now. So you make, again, assumptions because you're not staying as curious as you should in the beginning of your relationship, probably. So remind yourself, stay curious even after many, many years of your relationship. And that will avoid this problem of that your partner says, oh, you didn't listen to me again. And that can sometimes be the start of a fight, as everybody probably knows. So listen carefully there is important, as well as in the workplace. So remind yourself, stay curious. The other thing is pacing. I sometimes, when we are talking not so much about curiosity itself, but about listening skills, is sometimes you are on a different pace than the other one is in the conversation. And that leads to the fact, when I'm impatient and quick, for example, that I assume already what the other party is going to say, and then I already judge on it or already interject and cut off, which is very bad behavior. I know that. That's a big issue for myself, honestly. So adapt to the pace of the other person and allow that to happen, because otherwise people will say, oh yeah, he doesn't listen to me. And I hear that, absolutely. So I'm not perfect by no means, but I always remind myself, oh yeah, you have to do that. You have to really get in sync with your conversation partner and be curious, why does she or he say something?
I want to share, thank you for that, Dirk. I want to share this. Kavadi says listening can truly happen if we distinguish it from hearing. Listening to really understand, and that helps us to stay curious, distinguishing it from hearing. And it is so true. Hearing is a biological thing that happens naturally for those who have the ability, right, to hear naturally.
Yeah.
And then the listening is more of an intentional act, right? And it does make us have to prepare ourselves. Now, I have a confession. I'm not very great at listening at home. I'm saying that right here. I have a confession. So that there it is. And the other day my son said, "You're visible, but you're not present." And I went, "Ooh, that was he had no clue how much of it." Well, I think he did know how much that slapped me in my face, because he knows this is the work that I do. And I was like, "Oh no." And it was because I was like, here's what I do. I will get off early to like go pick him up or something like that. But as I get off early to go pick him up, I still am like maybe on my phone responding to emails. So it's not like after 5 o'clock. It's like it's 3:30, and I'm like, I'm still on the clock. It's my clock, of course,
Yeah,
right? And so I do that, unfortunately, often, because I'm picking them up or I'm dropping them off, and I have to like review something. And so, and in my mind, I could limit myself. Thanks, Philip. Philip said confession is good for the soul. He's right, and
absolutely.
this is a hard one to take, because this son knows that it just like gnaws at me that he said
Hmm.
that. Oh, you're present,
Absolutely.
but you're visible, but
Yeah,
you're not present. And I just want to
absolutely.
go. I just want to go. Do you have no clue? So that's the good discussion, right? Whether we're at work or at home, this is a good discussion to have. How do we, this idea of remaining present in the moment and trying to really void ourselves of all the things around us when we're with that person or that group in the moment, and not letting everything else get around. And especially like for me, it's like, well, here's my excuse. Well, I have 4 kids, like a business, like I'm the business owner, like I have all these things. I'm so important, right? This is what happens at home. And so then it's like, wait a second, you're just human, and these other humans, and they need you in the moment. And so you put the stupid phone down, even if it's at 3:30 and you're supposed to really, you want to be there for your clients. Are they saying something to you that's more important? And the odds are it is, because they're your family. So I don't know. I'd love for you to address that,
You're
or
right.
anybody out there address that.
I think we all have, to a certain degree, the same issues in this respect. We all have anecdotes like that, 100%. Absolutely agree. I would like to come back also to the comment before, the difference between listening and hearing. I think for me also listening means more than just listening with the ear, really, as I said before. It's also observing. In fact, therefore, your microfacial expressions are important to me, your body language. And this for me also is added to what we call listening. And then I can understand much better what you are trying to transmit. So we shouldn't forget about that.
I love that. Yes, that's that first step in the listening process for me, is called recognizing the unsaid. And this is exactly what you're talking about. It's the nonverbal cues that could just be happening between people. You could feel it if you're someone who has any level of emotional intelligence, where you could feel something slipping in the environment by like lots of different little things that add up. And so I love that all the facial expressions. People say, well, with Zoom, it's been really hard to know how my people are feeling. It's been really hard to have the connection we had in person. And I agree that it is harder. But what often happened when we were in person is we had our phones up and our laptop screens up anyway. We had people coming in and out of our door. We weren't giving people undivided attention, even when they were in person. So
I agree. Yes.
Maybe we could be more intentional about that on the screen.
That would probably drive up the efficiency of meetings by at least 30%. I'm with you. Yes.
Right? It's like, close the door, turn off the alarms, put all this stuff. Okay, now, this happened to me the other day. I had my 3 boys were right around the table. I'm literally right now sitting around a table. So the listening table is completely accurate. So I had my 3 boys sitting on the table, and they just were coming at me all at once. And then this happened, and then this happened. And I said, stop. I actually can't hear any of you. I want to listen to you, but I can't because you're all coming at me at one time. So shush, shush, shush. I can say that to my kids, right? Shush, shush. I want to hear you. What's like, and I'm just looking at him, and the others are like, they may feel ignored in the moment, but I have to give him my undivided attention. It's so important to me that I do that. But I had to be like, stop the insanity, clear away the fray, and let's get to me listening. And that's kind of what happened. I had the level of intentionality was just so out there. And I think we have to do that in this world where everything is just like.
It is.
I love this. Okay, so yes, Kavita recognized the unsaid. Absolutely. Barbara, oh, it's so good to see you here. The good thing is that this is recorded. It'll be recorded on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Facebook. So you can go back and watch the first half, and you want to do that because Dirk gave us some really good stuff. I know you've heard his curiosity talk, but it never gets old for me. There were 3 or 4 times I've heard it, and he gave a little bit about the history and the brain science behind it, and then we talked about some other stuff. So absolutely go. But welcome, good to see you here on this new platform too. Barbara was a part of the caring leadership community before, and even the HR community before that. So. We've been together for a while on this journey, haven't we? All of discovery and learning.
Yes, and out of curiosity. Yes, yeah.
That's what it's about. And when we think about that step of recognizing the unsaid, when you were talking about like the nonverbal cues and what is it they're saying to me? What are they not saying to me? It's understanding that people may not feel safe to tell you the truth. So you may lean in with curiosity. You may ask them questions. And they still might not talk. Why do you think that is?
Because the trust is missing, which I was referring to earlier on. Yeah, that's something to build, and it takes time. But it's even worse when you lose trust. To rebuild trust is even 10 times harder, I would say, than build trust in the first place. But yeah, that's a big.
So true. And that's exactly. I have in the work I do on the listening stuff. They'll come to me and they'll say, well, we tried to do a roundtable after George Floyd. We tried to really talk to people about the pandemic and vaccinations. We really did, and then it was like crickets chirping.
Yes.
And I say, well, let's see. You didn't do the hard work before that. You didn't build the trust that was necessary. They don't trust you. I'm not putting judgment on you by saying that. This is the reality of about 95% of people in the workplace.
Yeah.
So what can we do as leaders, right? What can we do to make sure that people do trust us? What are some of those things? Because I think even when you can say we can be curious all day. We can try to listen all day, but if they don't trust us, we're going to get nothing on the output.
True.
What
So
are some of
therefore,
your
you
ideas,
can
Dirk?
approach that in various stages. So when you have this situation, I think it would help already in the first step then to have an anonymous survey, for example, within your employees. If that's truly anonymous, people tend to really talk, and that's something that we've seen as well. And then you get very, very honest feedback, which you can then act upon. When you act upon that sufficiently and satisfying for the employees who gave that feedback, I think then trust builds up, and then they also start in the next phase to openly talk about that. But that takes time. It cannot be done overnight.
Yes, that's so true. It's the idea of, like, I always call it a cycle of listening, but it's like recognize the unsaid and then seeking to understand, and you seek to understand through a survey, or you seek to understand. You can do that, in a way that's, if you've built the trust up, but doing things like doing what you say you're going to do and doing it
Yes,
consistently, being there
absolutely.
in their corner when they might hit a wall, they may take a risk and fail. You are there for
Hmm.
them, and you're not
Of
there in a
course.
judgmental standpoint.
Yeah.
Being there for them if they're going through a tough circumstance, right, at home, and you are leaning in with them. These are like these practices, these daily practices are the things that build trust. And it's not just for people who have title. Active listening is
No,
required
everywhere.
for every single one of us,
Yeah.
right? And so how do we build trust with our customers? How do we build trust with our
Hmm.
coworkers in the moment? How do we build trust with our board members? All of these things require that. And so I love this, Philip. People need psychological safety to talk about almost any issue in order to create the trust. Yeah, and I think I would look at it differently. That they have to have the trust before they feel safe. And I think that's probably what you were trying to say. They
Yes.
have to have the trust before psychological safety is there. But you have to do the daily practices to create the foundation of trust, which makes them want to speak their truth. If you don't have that, they won't speak their truth. So no matter how much you try to seek to understand and recognize the unsaid in my cycle of listening, it's not going to matter because you didn't do the work to get there. Now, having said
Yes.
that, if you're like, let's say you're in team meetings, or like Dirk was talking about, if you're in team meeting, you're in one-on-one, someone gives you a piece of feedback and you need to hold it in confidence, you hold it in confidence. If you need to act on it and they want you to do, you act on it, and you go back to them and let them know, how much you go to decode it, you act upon it, and you tell them you acted on it based upon what they said to you. And then they know, okay, this person takes my voice kind of seriously. But if
Yes.
you don't, which is where most people, we do a survey and we never hear anything back ever. Like, again, crickets chirping. We ask 2,500 people and we tell them nothing after we've asked them.
Yeah, I
That
heard
is
that
the
as
best way to
well.
break
That
down
this has
trust.
happened. Yes, and you said another important thing in the beginning of that, consistency. So when the trust is gone, let's say with a customer, we are not only talking about employees but also our customers, of course. And there is something failing, for example, an instrument might not work, and you lose trust from the customer in this product. But if you then follow through with what you are promising, a repair or an expedited shipment or whatever it is, and you follow through with that, you can get a much higher satisfaction with the customer than you even had before. So consistency is key. Really do what you say you are doing.
That's absolutely, and then follow up with them to say like exactly what. One thing I discovered this, like, oh my gosh, probably 15, 20 years ago, and it was in the mortgage space, and it was real estate. And somebody, we had signed on for this program called, I think it was called At Your Service or something. And what they taught realtors and people in mortgage industry is, if you are going to, let's say a customer asks you for something in the sales process, or they ask you for something and you're already, they're a customer of yours, instead of going back to them saying, we got it done, we took care of it. Instead of doing that, you actually take them through almost like the decoding you did. So you asked me for this thing. I went and I did this research, and I talked to Sarah in customer service, and I talked to this person in billing, and I talked to this person in production. And guess what happened? They all decided to do the thing you wanted. So that's so cool, isn't it? And when you go
Yes.
that route, now they see, here's that brain signal. They say, wow, they heard me. They were super intentional about researching and thinking about how they could serve my need. And in the
Hmm.
end, they serve my need. And they're telling
Yes.
me they serve my need because of what I told them. So they follow
Yeah.
the entire, what I call cycle of listening,
Yes.
step
So
by step. And it's
through the whole
beautiful.
journey, yeah, you accompany them and hold them by the hand throughout the journey of the sales process, and then yeah, that's the best that you can do.
I absolutely love it. For everybody who's been out there, I'm going to try to end this around like the 45-minute mark. For everybody who's been out there, Barbara and Philip and let's see who else was out there. There was Kavita and Lisa, and I'm not sure who else is there, but whoever else is out there that's not putting in the chat. Thanks for joining. And we will be doing this every couple weeks. There could be times I might be joining you from the airport. I'm going to be 100% honest because I travel a lot for speaking. But no matter what, I'll be trying to fit it in. Occasionally, it may not be me. It may be somebody else that's it could even be Dirk that will be leading it. So it'll be someone that I trust. It's in my trusted inner circle who may be leading it as I'm gone. But in the end, the discussion will always have an angle or some way that comes back to listening, because I do think listening, everything starts and stops with listening. So that if we aren't listening, we don't get to the bottom of anything we want. If we aren't listening, all the goals, all the things we want to achieve, we never get there. So my goal is for all of us on this journey to learn how to listen more effectively. So we'll be hearing it from all different types. We'll do panels, discussions. We'll do me just one-on-one, maybe doing some trainings. We'll do these kind of interviews this way. The other thing I would say is make sure you ping me at Heather at employeefanatics.com. Heather at employeefanatics.com. If you have any guest ideas or any other ideas on interviewing as it relates to the listening table, because I'm always open for feedback, right? That's pretty appropriate. Thank you so much for everybody joining. And again, this is going to be recorded. So you can, once it's live, you can share it far and wide to get as many people educated on this stuff. And in the meantime, we'll see you later. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
And
you
thank you,
so much,
Dirk.
Heather. It was a
Appreciate
pleasure.
you.
Thank you. Likewise. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.